Check 1, 2. Aye.
All right. We'll go ahead and begin. We have 3, and we have 2 more coming in. I'm not sure about the 5th one. All right. Well, to keep the staff not waiting, it's now 10 o'clock, and we'll go ahead and begin. And with that, we have, I think, a transformative budget, a budget that will be transformational. With the way that we have given guidance to the staff to restructure our finances, I think we'll get more value for our citizens. And secondly, we'll do it at least cost. So this is all very good. It's exciting, and the bond and the debts and taxes and fees and all that means good things here for the citizens at less cost, I think, net cost. So with that, Mr. Carpenter, go ahead, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, we'll be reviewing the remainder of our budget today, which are our special revenue funds. Special revenue funds are separate and independent of the general fund. They have their own dedicated source of revenue. They have their own expenses. Each fund is kept separate from the others. And we're going to start, and I'm going to skip a couple as we go through to put to the end, so I'll tell you the page we'll be going to. We're going to start with our special revenue fund for the canteen, inmate canteen. The inmate canteen is the revenue that is collected from the inmates as they purchase items for their own personal use. By law, it has to be used, the revenue has to be put back into the system to benefit inmates. You see what we are proposing, bringing in about $247,000 this year, and then spending $247,000 as well. The bulk of it going to program supplies that are used to run the jail in a fashion that is safe and humane.
Okay, and you've helpfully added last year's costs and this year's, next year's. Yes. And the right-hand column is to show us what?
The right-hand column shows you the difference from the current year we were in, which was the COVID budget, to the new budget.
Okay, got it. So 3 columns, 21, 22, 2021, and then the delta. Got it. Thank you.
All right. Moving on to 911 tariff. Again, the 911 tariff is the $1 per landline that we charge to everybody in the county. The revenue estimated this current year is about $168,000. No surprise that as people ditch their landlines every year, we generally bring in less than the year before. We're kind of holding steady this term forward. You see where we see we're limited to how we can use that money. We can spend it on certain items, but we can't use it to actually run the call center itself. So that's why the call center shows up under the general fund. So we're able to use it to get equipment. So you see the bulk of the cost is going to paying our phone bill to actually run the 911 center, maintenance on the equipment we have, and then purchasing equipment. The equipment purchased can be new stations, it can be chairs, it can be a variety of things. As you can imagine, a facility where you have to literally sit pretty much your entire shift, chairs are very important. So 911 chairs tend to be a different nature than most office chairs do. So again, a revenue of $805,000, expenditures of $805,000 as well.
And I notice we're in EMS week today. Gerald, good to see you. And the dispatchers are the heartbeat of our county. Thank you very much, ma'am. Appreciate it.
Question.
And congratulations to the EMS team. Thank you. Yeah, David.
On the 911 tariff, so is the landline fee, is it more or less than what a wireless customer pays? And how's that structured?
Wireless is handled differently. A landline is a flat $1 per month. Wireless is generally going to be a percentage of a bill. That goes to Columbia. It doesn't go to the local county. So when you use a cell phone and you pay a 911 charge on your cell phone bill, that goes to the Columbia. They then will use that to reimburse certain costs to us. So if you look under the expenditures and on the revenue side, you'll see there's state wireless and state reimbursement. That's the money that is sent to us from Columbia from wireless phones. But for the reimbursement, we have to physically send in bills to them, of which they'll reimburse, generally like 80% of the cost of the item.
So I'm getting in the weeds here. So is that a General Assembly thing as far as that being treated differently?
Yeah, they saw where the future was and they grabbed the money for themselves, to be honest with you, versus letting like the landlines, the counties receive that revenue from within their boundaries. And so it's put a hurt on most 911 systems in the state because we've lost the source of revenue that was really intended to fund 911. And now we go into a system where we have to beg them to help fund our system.
Well, then the other interesting thing is, so now it's not uncommon for people to have out-of-state area codes and live in an area because they move, and I wonder how that's handled.
Well, generally, you're going to go through a tower.
Okay,
You
so
pick up
the
that
tower
tower.
pings it, and,
Yeah. So
okay.
if you ever look, it's like, the town of Elgin collects money off of the tower that's sitting in Elgin. So on my phone bills, a lot of times I'll see, the town of Elgin collecting revenue off my cell phone.
Okay. It's a tidbit that I've never thought of that perhaps needs a look in the General Assembly. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Give me another high horse to get on.
Next is the local accommodations. Will be page 64. The revenue we anticipate receiving this year, $165,000. The way we are proposing to spend it, the bulk of it's going to the city of Camden for the visitor center that we have committed to run. We are required by law to have a visitor center. In the past, the Chamber of Commerce ran the visitor center. We funded them. That's why you don't see them any longer receiving funding under this line item. So we receive money that comes in from hotel stays. So the A-tax is almost totally paid by people from out of the county versus people in the county like a sales tax would be. So $100,000 going to help run the visitor center when it opens in Camden, as well as the support. In the past, we had supported Historic Camden and the Fine Arts Center from the general fund, but we moved them under accommodations funds a couple of years ago because of their ability to attract tourism to the county and to better reflect a way to fund them and source them.
What's the other operations?
Sorry, other operations, those are just give us the ability, for example, the Ag Art Tour, that we would sponsor, items like that we would sponsor that are tourism related, or small amounts of funds that we can put into county facilities related to tourism.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Page 65, the CTC. CTC is the Transportation Committee. Again, that is a state organization that is funded through part of the gas tax we pay when we purchase fuel. The General Assembly 2 years ago raised that, so they receive more money than they did. This is the entity that paves roads in Kershaw County. The county does not pave roads. The state paves roads through the CTC. The CTC is appointed by the delegation in Kershaw County as well. So this year they'll receive about $1.8 million. You see how they break it down as far where they see that it would be going in there. The bulk of it obviously is road improvements, which is paving roads in the county. The county provides support to them. We provide all the finance that they need. We provide our county engineer. We provide secretarial support for them as well. So we provide all of their overhead admin support to them. And then they pave. They are required to pave at least 25% state roads. And frequently it'll be 50-50 county, state, sometimes 75-25 county. But we generally get the lion's share of the money on county roads.
How much does it cost to pave 1 mile of road?
It's half, yeah. I mean, it's going to
About $1
depend
million
on if you got to put bridges, drainage, things like that.
So we can't even pave 2 miles a year.
We don't pave many. We normally pave, small roads and subdivisions, things like that. That's generally what we're doing, and we're resurfacing versus paving. They don't really pave many roads each year. They'll be resurfacing roads and maybe pave 1 or 2 roads a year that are dirt.
Correct me if I'm wrong, it's a lot more expensive to pave a road than to resurface a road.
Yes, sir.
I was always told, Vic, that it's about $1 million to pave a new road. Is that about right?
I've heard that, Mr. Jones. So that's, I've heard $500,000 depending on the kind of road it is, $1 million. Nowadays, I would probably tend more to the $1 million than $500,000 the way costs are anymore. But yeah, they don't still have much money to make significant changes. They generally pave a couple miles a year.
Well, our Public Works does a great job, outstanding job with the resources they have, and I just appreciate that as well.
But it is important, none of this goes into the county public works.
Correct.
So as we look at this all goes to the CTC.
Now, CTC's been very good working with us on the calcium chloride, have they not?
Yes, sir. They provide funding to the county that we use for calcium chloride dust prevention on county roads.
Right, thank you.
Yes, sir. Moving on then to the sewer tax district. A sewer tax district is, again, the 2.6 mils that is collected that is used to pay the debt that sits currently on the treatment plant. So we anticipate bringing in roughly $524,000. And then you see broken down on the various bonds that are out there that we would pay this year on.
So, okay,
Can we pause and have discussion, since there's been so much talk on sewer?
Mhm.
This tax is imposed on vehicles, boats, and all unimproved and improved parcels.
Yes, any property.
So if it moves in Kershaw County, it's taxed.
Correct. Outside the city of Camden and the Camden Service District.
Right, okay. We've had some talks of a self-sustaining system versus actually selling the system. We've had good discussion from Mr. Jones, as we've all discussed and seen in the papers that selling the system would create revenue and it would get rid of the sewer tax. Has our sewer system evolved in Kershaw County in the West Watery area? Because this basically serves, I think, 98% West Watery.
Probably 99.5% West Water.
Okay. Is it feasible that we could set a goal to erode this tax and get rid of this tax and let it be a self-sustaining system, more like a private entity?
Yes, sir, I believe that would be feasible to study it and see what we'd have to do. And I think that the potential is certainly there, maybe not at the current rate structure, but the potential would be there.
excuse me, I didn't hear what you said.
I said, yes, I think it is feasible, maybe not at the current rate structure, but it is certainly feasible that it could be self-sustaining.
Rate structure, we're talking about the cost of the system and cost of services.
Correct, on the user.
Yeah, and we talked about that with, in another meeting, we talked about the fact that costs have risen, and we do need to do a rate study, and we all understand, as Mr. Jones stated, the cost of hamburgers have gone up. I think we're trying to find a happy median in relieving the citizens of what we would now consider maybe an unfair tax and move forward thoughtfully into a way to have this system be self-sustaining and maybe profitable. One thing that we may encourage, we may not be able to do it in this budget cycle, but to not take, I think we're taking $250,000 out of the budget and putting it back in the general fund. And we're moving that money out because at some point it wasn't self-sustaining and we were borrowing from the general fund. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Plus, we also provide administrative support to it as well in the general fund.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Let's talk about that in a and a B situation. Have the funds been paid back that were borrowed?
I'd have to, Sanders not here today, I'd have to check to see where we are on that. They're, to my knowledge, are not fully paid back yet because we only started paying ourselves a few years ago, but we're chipping away at it, yes, sir.
Okay. Do we have to pay that back, or can we just call it square and move forward? What's legal?
Well, it's not as much legal as accounting principles. So living by what our CPAs and accountants tell us we need to do and to keep track, we'd have to keep track of the debt
Right.
because it is an independent fund of the county. So you kind of have to track all your debits and credits forever. So that would always remain over there as a debit against that account.
Okay. But we could probably structure it in a way in which we wouldn't have to unfairly subsidize the sewer system if it's now making a profit, if you will. If we're able to take $250,000 out of it, and that's half of the tax there in itself, and a rate study may make up the rest of the need for that $500,000. We could relieve the existing revenue bonds and reissue, tax-based bonds, and reissue a revenue bond for future expansion.
I believe it's feasible. Again, I think you'd start with a rate study and that'll kind of lay out what your costs are going to be for the next 10 to 20 years, and then the rates you'd have to put in effect in order to accomplish that. Yes, sir.
And, you know, we want to be able to, if somebody says, hey, I had a call actually as I was walking in the building, hey, we're getting an odor here, we're getting an odor there. Currently, because we own the system, we can respond pretty quick to those issues. I think if we didn't own the system, we would have to make phone calls and we would be dependent on somebody else to fix those issues. So my thought is this is a happy medium between selling the system and keeping it as is. I hope there's some further thoughts and discussion that can be had. I don't know how much time we have. I don't want to take up too much time.
Much
I
as
think
you
that,
need.
I think you can see that when we voted last week, Mr. Tucker brought in a motion that we look at that in a very, as I said before, transformative way. And it was voted, and Mr. Jones, who brought in the earlier proposal, seconded Mr. Tucker's proposal. I think that's very much a part of what we're going to do go forward.
I have a
Agree,
couple
Sammy,
comments.
on that?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Yeah, okay.
I have a couple
Mr. Jones seconded
comments.
it. Yeah, what you got, Jimmy?
Now, the motion that you made, Sammy, Vice Chairman, please correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't it a motion to do a rate study, feasibility study based on rates?
It's included.
What else is included? What else was included in that motion?
As the motion stated, means of us partnering, us coming up with a way of physically being responsible for it as for the county only. It's kind of a wide variety of things according to the administration's recommendations as they move forward to see what's going to be best practice, Mr. Jones. So
Yeah, and that's what I pretty much thought your motion was meaning. That's why I seconded it.
Right.
I just do have some concerns when we're looking at this, and I want to thank my colleague, Mr. Brazel, for putting the hard-working time he is trying to reach some kind of happy medium to maybe do away with the unfair tax that we charge people in the county that will never see sewer, which was enacted in 2007. I voted against it then, fought against it then, have fought against it many times in between. And, you know, having that tax, I think it's difficult for us to say that our sewer is paying for itself. The citizens are paying for it as long as we're taxing them. And you know, of course, the council can levy property taxes in that district, correct, Mr. Carpenter? And the council can also issue bonds for facilities and equipment and collect taxes to repay those bonds, correct? Council, I think, is obligated to levy taxes to repay bonds if necessary, correct? When was the last rates adjustment done in the sewer district?
I'm not sure, but I believe it was before I got here, so maybe 2010, 2011.
Right. And then I think you just quoted that the sewer district revenue was about 524,000.
That was a tax revenue.
Tax district.
Oh, that was the tax revenue, okay. And what is the sewer district revenue?
We'll be getting to that in a little bit.
Okay.
It's a different
But-
source. I mean,
Oh,
but
you
it's,
don't know it now?
I mean, it's a couple $1 million total
Yeah.
from all sources.
Right.
Um,
And can I ask a question? How much is owed on the sewer bonds? Because, you know, we got one bond with the 2007 treatment plant and the Southern Loop.
The Southern Loop is a revenue bond. It's about $7 million, $7.5 million total for that whole project. The money on the treatment plant, I don't have the exact figure, but it's in the $2 million, $2.5 million range that we owe on the facility for the treatment plant and the lab.
And you said how much were their sewer tax mills?
2.6.
2.6, and the revenue from that, that's the,
That's what pays for the, on this page 66, those two bonds, 2008 and 2016.
let me ask you this. Is there sufficient money to do away with the sewer tax and pay bonds for sewer revenue? And I'll repeat that if I have to.
But when you say is there sufficient money, you mean money
Is-
sitting in the bank?
Is there sufficient money to do away with the sewer tax district and to pay the bonds from the sewer revenue?
I can't tell you that for sure. I've reached out to the people that work with our bonds, and we started looking at that to see. So we don't have an answer today. Hopefully I'd have one next week for you on that one.
Because I think that kind of goes in line with what
Yes, sir.
my colleague, Mr. Brazel's talking about.
Again, back to the answer I gave Mr. Brazel, I believe it's feasible. But again, I don't know if there are any prepayment penalties or things like that.
Sure.
That's what they're looking at.
What I don't want to see, and I know Mr. Brazel's the same way, I don't want to see, and I'm not insinuating this is what's going on, but I don't want to see a pea and shell game done to where, okay, we do away with this tax, but then we issue this bond. In other words, the unincorporated areas are paying for the sewer, whether you have sewer or not, you're paying for it, and I'm against that and always will be. But you got to be careful, because then if we say, okay, we're going to take care of that, but we're going to issue certain bonds, then the city of Camden and other people will be paying for that then. In other words, it'll just be kind of spreading it out to more folks in the county, a debt. Go ahead.
If I may clarify.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's two sorts of bonds that we're talking about. And Vic, tell me, what's the name of the bond if it's tax-based?
It's a general obligation bond.
All right, so a general obligation bond is based on tax revenue. A revenue bond is based on income. And that income would not be tax-based, it'd be user-based, so folks paying their bills, just like a private entity. So the plan that I propose would completely do away with the tax. And we wouldn't reissue, if a bond's reissued, it's reissued on the basis that the sewer is making enough money to pay that bond, just like a private business would. So are we on the same page?
Yes, sir. That's what I've asked the attorneys and bond counsel to look at it and work with myself and Sandra to see just what is feasible in our bond structure for the sewer side. Yes.
So yes, to answer the question, it wouldn't go back to any taxpayers at that point.
Is it true that the sewer tax is tied to the debt? So it's sundowns when the debt is paid. Is that correct?
Yes,
Like
sir.
it's kind of automatic?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah.
And also, we have in sewer debt, I know we have, about 6.5 million that we owe currently.
Well, this total Southern Loop project is about 7.5, then another two or so million for the treatment plant and all that.
And let me also mention to my colleagues, and Mr. Brazel, while you're thinking about this, we need to also think about the expansion. You know, you're looking at maybe $20 million to expand. That's going to have to be done as well, too. So I don't know how much of that is incorporated into what you're putting together. And I appreciate what you're putting together. I'm just throwing these thoughts at you as you work on it, that you may look at that and consider that and have some answers for that as well.
Yeah, so if
Good
a
idea.
bond was issued for, to build the treatment facility, that bond would also be issued as a revenue bond, not a general obligation bond.
Mr. Carpenter, how would we pay for the expansion to 20 million?
It'd be council's choice. If you wish to expand the system, you wanted the rate user to pay it, then your rate study would incorporate those costs into the rates you charge. If you didn't want that, then the county would decide if they wish to issue another GO bond. It's council decision how you pay for it.
Either have to issue a GO bond or either raise the rates
Yes,
on the
sir.
users. Okay, that's for the expansion.
Well, I mean, the study hasn't been done yet, so I can't
Correct.
tell you it may come back and say you're bringing in enough money with your customer base that you can do it. That's why we need to do a rate study first to determine what the expenses are that we're going to be looking at, and then what we're currently charging and what we need to charge in order to generate the revenue needed to run the system for the next however many years the window is.
Well, I just want to really give Councilman Vice Chairman Tucker a salute on making that motion to get this study going, and a salute to Mr. Brazel for, whether we agree or not, I don't know yet, but he's got my attention. Of course, I'm just one vote, but he's got my attention, and I appreciate us looking into this at this point. I feel like we really don't have a choice, because, you know, we're hitting some dead ends with sewer. We got to expand. We're not going to have the capacity unless we do expand. And, we got the Southern Loop, that's $7 million. And the thing with that is we're using the fee and lieu to pay for that. And the schools get, as Ms. Tucker said, the schools get their portion, and they need to continue to get their portion. But bottom line is, I still feel that the proposal I made was the best thing for all of us, because it would have wiped out all our debt and, and been ran by a private entity who would absolutely respond very quickly if there was any issues, with it, because it'd be there through a franchise agreement. But anyway, that's neither here or there. That was voted down. But I do just want to say, whether I agree or not, I don't know, because I don't have all the information. I'm sure everybody feels the same way. I'm looking forward to hearing the rest of the information as we move forward.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, Ben, go ahead.
I think we're all in agreement about the rate study. To
That's
such an
right.
extent that it's already in the budget, and even before our last meeting, you'd already proposed that it would be funded before us. How long does that take, and how much is it going to cost, if you'll remind us?
Well, we'd have to put it out for bids, so I don't know the exact cost to it, but generally it's going to take 3 months
Okay,
as a rule, 3 to 6 based on how in-depth they get. If they have to, if we include the expansion, then they'd have to throw engineering in, so maybe 6 months.
okay. And then what was the cost again on it that you budgeted?
I don't know, I haven't put it out for bid yet. I would probably do 80 and 120,000.
Okay, but you built that into the budget?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Brazel's approach, I really like. The idea of becoming self-sustaining. How many actual users do we have on the sewer system right now? I remember hearing 1,800, 2,300.
Well, it's a little over 2,200 now.
2,200?
Yes.
Over 2,200?
Correct.
And the fact that we haven't impacted or changed rates over the last 10 years means we haven't even kept up with inflation over that period of time. So clearly we need the rate study. I'm glad it's budgeted for, and I look forward to learning what it says so we can adapt and adjust and change rate structures, and then figure out how to issue bonds that make sense. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I think we've come back to the fact that we've all supported Mr. Tucker's motion that was seconded by Mr. Jones at the end of the last meeting to do that study and other things associated with it. As Mr. Jones points out, there's not just a rate study, but also improvement to the whole thing. So there you go. But Russell, does that meet your points that you want to make?
Yes, sir, it does. I think the only thing I would like to do is set a goal for a time frame. I don't want to kick the can down the road and then nothing happening.
Yeah, when would that be, though? When do you think? Next budget cycle or what?
Yeah, I'd like to, well, let's
Think about that.
let's have a midpoint as well. And then
Yeah.
something needs to be conclusive
Oh.
by
Like
June 30th of 2022.
Yeah, November, no later than November, is that good
Yeah,
enough?
because it's not going to be it may take a little longer than November, but it won't be of much value to us if we don't have hard data by January, certainly.
Correct.
Well,
I would say-
when we get started in January of next year, we need to have all the data we need
In
to,
front of us.
to set it as a high priority goal. And then by the end of budget, it needs to be conclusive and moving forward, in my opinion.
Yes.
Let's do that. That sounds like a good idea, and that was the intent. Now we got a date, and I'll see you on Halloween. Is that good?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Just fine.
Thank you.
Moving on to another fun topic, solid waste. Again, solid waste is funded with a $80 household fee. You see the revenues, the bulk of the revenue comes from that fee. We do receive some money from the landfill disposal and recycling, and tires are incidental. We used to receive 6 figures from recycling, but recycling as a commodity market has collapsed in the last 4 years. China no longer takes recyclables from the U.S., which was the market that they got sold to. So it's no longer really a line item that adds any significant value to the county when we used to receive 6 figures a year from recycled goods. Expenses, again, just very cut and dried. It's gotten to the point where it's a pretty bare bones operation. Again, even with new houses coming in, the fee doesn't generate enough new revenue to equal the cost of increases of retirement, health, fuel, things like that. A couple years ago, we did we publicized our fleet from Waste Management, and that's one reason why we're still able to have a balanced budget, because we're not having to pay Waste Management the hauling costs that we were doing. We do it internally instead. So that's why we're still able to keep a balanced budget. But we don't have a significant amount of available capital each year to invest into the system. We'll be purchasing some new trucks this year because we're starting to put some miles on. So, we'll purchase trucks and capital. We mentioned that last week. That'll go in and take the oldest, most miles vehicle, put them into a reserve capacity, so we have backup. Currently, we don't have any backup vehicles, so this will provide us the ability to keep running trucks if one goes down. Right now, if a truck goes down, then we're just down a truck, and that slows down the operation. So the new trucks we put in through our capital fund will allow us to continue to be as efficient as possible. Again, we just don't have a lot of money extra than that, so we'll try to put some money into fixing up some of the convenience centers. Every year they do that. They fix it the best they can. But, that's, at some point, I think we're going to have to discuss how this is structured as well and where we want to go with solid waste. But for this year, it's a balanced budget.
It is a balanced budget. Are we losing money this year?
This current year, even the one we're finishing up, I didn't actually bring that with me.
But I mean,
right.
in your judgment, we are breaking even.
We're breaking even, yes, sir.
And prices accelerating, as Mr. Connell said, in sewer and elsewhere. We can expect to have to readdress how we've structured the payment of this.
Yes, so we're breaking even by not spending money. That's how we're breaking even. So we're not going to go in the hole. We're not going to run in the red, but that means we're not putting money into things we probably should do.
Yeah, deferred maintenance costs more later.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, buddy. Hey, Jimmy.
Quick question. This is solid waste we're talking about, but it kind of goes along with this. There was talk about having to build a new building out of the landfill.
Yes.
Of course, how much is that projected to cost?
Well, I was going to get into that in a little bit.
Okay, well, we'll wait. We'll wait.
Solid waste.
I don't want to jump the gun on that.
Yeah. This is maybe off
Excuse me.
another tangent, but
Excuse me, can I?
go ahead, Jimmy.
Thank
I'm
you very
sorry. I
much.
didn't know you finished.
Bottom line is, that's one thing I just want to make sure that I know we are, but we've got a lot of wants and a lot of needs, a whole lot of needs out there when you talk about that building, sewer, and you talk about fire, and then you talk about EMS, you talk about the law enforcement and all the rest of the employees. So, there's the talk about a lot of things need to be done, and we're talking about a lot of money that we probably don't even have enough money to do one of them. But I'll just be curious to see what we decide to do and how we decide to do it and how we're going to pay for it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, Sammy, please.
No, I'm good, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah,
Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Operationally, we had an employee come up one of the last meetings, I think, and talk about not having equipment to pack down, and he felt like we were carrying a bunch of air. I was wondering just what was the follow-up on that and any validity to it? Do we need to address it and buy some equipment that will save us net overall?
Good question, Ben. Good question.
Danny, you want to address that one particular piece of equipment?
Yeah, so we're not paying by weight, we're paying by load itself?
Yeah.
So the biggest problem is yard debris?
Yeah. Sometimes we have a full load that's 900 pounds because it's limbs and things like that, so. And, backhoes aren't meant to be packers. They're not designed to push down like that. They're designed to do other things, so.
Have
they're
y'all
not
ever-
the most.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go
So they're
ahead.
not the most efficient way of managing a load like that. Where the biggest issue comes from is the fact that we collect yard waste at every single convenience center. We're one of the only counties in the state that does that. Very few counties accept yard waste at convenience centers. They'll maybe have a couple spots in the county and the citizens take it to those spots and then they process it on site versus moving them up and down the roads. So we've been talking about that for a couple of years, that the way we manage our yard waste is inherently inefficient and it'll be very difficult to ever change that aspect of it.
Do we have a chipper?
We have contracts for one. One comes in once a year and mulches everything that we do.
Okay.
So we don't own one ourselves. A tub grinder is, golly, over $1 million.
We probably
for a
don't
tub
want to
grinder.
own one. The maintenance on them are awful.
Yeah.
What about the chipping up tires and stuff? Do we do that?
We don't chip them up, but we have to collect the tires by law, and then we process them out at the landfill and put them in tractor trailers that are then hauled up to a facility where we have to pay them to take them from us.
If you could contract with somebody to come chip that stuff, I think you can sell it. I'm
You
not
used to be
expert
able
on
to
that.
sell them for like septage fields,
Right.
and that was a very profitable market for a while, but DHEC has changed the rules that you operate under for that, so that's no longer a viable market for counties. That used to be able to make $250,000 a year doing
Yeah.
that,
Wow.
and you can't do that anymore.
Shucks. What about, I've even seen the rubber like on,
The playground?
maybe not playgrounds.
Playground, yeah, I mean, that's a
Yeah.
market.
Well, that's when we sell the tires to the recycler, that's what they're doing.
That's what they're doing.
Yes, sir. But they're able to do because we're paying them to take our tires. So their fundamental business model is based on us paying them to take the commodity, and then they process the commodity and sell it.
Man, I wish
to
somebody
whomever.
would pay me to take wood.
You can figure out the way.
Somebody's making money because that rubber mulch is expensive.
I was going to ask, to follow on, is I've gone around and talked to the employees at those waste sites. They're good people, most of them retirees and working part-time. And you and I talked about the pay issue. Also, but that leads to my next issue, which is a real issue, is the council has asked you to come back later on pay, and that will be rolled into this budget. Are you going to expose that in this session or at the second reading? I don't want to take you off what we have to focus on today.
Yeah, I thought we were going to just do a session next Tuesday before at 10 o'clock. I thought that was the plan.
Is that everybody ready to do that?
That's on only the pay.
Yes, sir.
If I may,
Is that
Mr. Chair.
okay for
Thank you,
everybody? Let me
thank you
just
for,
make sure
yeah,
it's
thank you
okay.
for bringing that up,
Yeah.
because let me just say this, that's my number one priority this year is our employees. Not expansion, not throwing more out there, taking any monies we have and putting it into them, because they're working hard, they're doing a great job. You know, even the jail needs the jail needed expanding 10 years ago. So we got so many of those needs, and we'll get to those, I'm sure. But I'm glad to hear this council really saying, I hope, that the employees are going to be number one this year. Thank you.
So, but to answer the question, I think everybody knows we're going to be here on next Tuesday at 10 o'clock. Okay. Back to you, Vic. Thank you, everybody.
Sir.
Mr. Carpenter.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
One question I had to gauge value on that last discussion. So what's the expenditure line item that would be associated with hauling air? Is it CS disposal at 250? I'm just trying to figure if we spend 80,000 on a piece of equipment to pack it down, are we only saving 50 on?
It's more than 80,000.
Well, disposal is what we're paying
Get some use, I
tipping
know.
fees at the landfill. So when we take that, we're 250 for landfill fees.
But is that where you reflect the cost per load?
For trucking, that's going to show up under your operations. So when you see operations for the airport, Elgin, Mount Pisgah, those costs are figured into there. So like when we spend $110,000 at Elgin, that's those costs and, you know.
That's all right.
Yeah, I mean-
Listen, they wouldn't have it broken down in a way with this off-the-cuff question,
Yeah.
but you can get it to me later. Just trying to figure on what the value is there. If we
Well, we try to show what it costs to run each convenience center for trucking. That's why we broke it down by convenience center, so you can see where the usage is through what we're spending. So that's where you're going to find most of those costs for trucking in there.
Okay, we can move on. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Good discussion. Back to you, Vic.
All right, sir. Moving on to the airport. And the airport is a special revenue fund. We created an industrial park encompassing just the airport a few years ago so that we could capture revenue from planes that were based there and spend it on the airport itself. So this year, we're anticipating about a $460,000 line item. We sell fuel. Of course, you recall that was an issue some years ago with the FBO at the time over the fuel sales. So we reflect that as our main item of revenue is our fuel sales. The transfer from economic development, when we talked about the last meeting over the resurfacing of the runway at the airport and the county match, the county match comes from the economic development fund because the airport is so critical to economic development. So we transfer that money from Economic Development Fund into the airport so they can resurface the runway. Because we now are the FBO, we have full-time employees here, so now you see full-time and part-time employees as line items as well. Our biggest expense, obviously, is buying fuel. Question? Okay.
I don't have any questions. I just look forward to the improvements that are going to happen out there with our match in this current budget. Appreciate Danny for how he's helped run much of it over there. And then I think we've got on the horizon the hangar repair. I don't want to call it a study, but trying to figure out what we need to do for the actual space out there to preserve and improve it a little bit.
It's, as you say, Ben, it's our front porch. It's what big investors see in county first before they see anything else. And we're very proud of what's happened out there with our airport. I think it was Thursday night, I was out there with the owner of the Panthers, and she was contributing to the North Central High School prom. So got a good impression of our county out there. Thank you. Go ahead.
Moving on to economic development. Again, economic development is paid for with fee in lieu. So industrial fees pay for the expenses of the department. You see that we show the reflection of the transfer from their reserves into their revenue, and then later on you see us taking that $100,000 and moving it out over to the airport. Biggest, other than staff, the contracted services, which is where we put our fees to the Central SC Allowance, utilities for all the industrial parks, our large line item. Site development is work, cutting grass, things like that on the industrial parks as well. Even all the industrial parks that the county owns, we're responsible for maintaining, lighting, things like that. So we'll, even if a park fills up, we'll still be responsible for maintaining that park in perpetuity.
So we have cut the budget for economic development decisively.
From where it used to be, yes, sir.
Okay? And we have seen, and we hope to see at second and third readings at some point, the fruits of that good labor over the last 5 years. And again, we are still not announcing those in anything but title, but the news is very good indeed, and congratulations to the team. Thank you.
Inmate detention program. Again, this is a home detention that is an option that inmates can pay a fee, basically an ankle bracelet, allow them to stay home versus in the jail. The revenues that we generate off of leasing it to them, we turn around and spend on what it costs us to run the program. So it's a break even. It's really the first full year we're going to be doing it. So we'll know more as the years go on, but this being a first year, we're just kind of everything's an estimate at this point. That was one of the goals of the council a few years ago, was to set this up. So this program is now set up and running.
Good.
Mr. Carpenter.
Yes, sir.
22 years ago, I had this program in the jail, and we had quite a few people on work release and also house detention. And even if it's a break even, it's a win-win because we don't have them in our jail, and that helps us, as our wonderful jail administrator understands, be in compliance with the state standards. What is the population, daily population at this point in time? I think the jail's still ready for 89, isn't it? What's the daily population?
Our average population, 103 so
Well, to
far.
keep it at 103, that's doing an outstanding job because it's revolving doors.
It's been as high as the 120s on a given day, and it's been as low as the mid-80s.
And currently, we have how many on house arrests? None right now. Oh, that's right, because you're just going to get it kicked back up. And mostly, that's going to be, I can tell you right now, and I know Mr. Cato understands this, that's going to take a lot of work for him because he's got to have somebody who can be a liaison between the courts to make sure they're pushing this program, especially with your family court and things like that. Are you going to be able to make that work with the staff you got? Great, great. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Sir.
If I could go back for just a minute. Vic, I had a quick question on economic development, please. Was that part of your negotiation on the vehicle allowance? Because I see we took that out with the new hire.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right.
Explanation, Mr. Tucker.
I was asking him about the vehicle allowance. It was zeroed out for this year versus last year, but it was negotiation with him with the new hire of the Economic Development Director,
How much is that?
$12,000.
1,000 a month?
Yes, sir.
It was.
Was, yeah, that's what he said. He said, how much was it? So that's 1,000 a month.
No,
No, no.
1,000.
I was like, you're not stroking out about that, you know? Like,
No,
like, that's
listen.
a lot of money, right?
$1,000 a month. I'm going to put it on record. I think $1,000 a month is too much for vehicle allowance. I'll just be honest with
Well,
you.
it's zeroed out now.
Got you.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, I think it's a lot of money.
I'm assuming that includes fuel.
Some people live off $1,000 a month. Thank you.
Our library.
Library, and Amy's
Social work
here. Good to see
is-
you, Amy.
As you may have seen recently, the announcement that the county has been the recipient of a several-year grant to allow us to hire a social worker. So you see the revenue from the state of South Carolina coming in, and then the expenses going out for our social worker. So the individual has started already this fiscal year, and then that'll be, next year will be the full fiscal year as well for the program.
Okay.
The next one is my proposal for the American Rescue Plan, ARPA. As you recall, the federal government approved a rescue plan that will affect local governments. Kershaw County's slotted to receive almost $13 million over the next 12 months. We're supposed to receive the first half of it before the end of this fiscal year, and then the rest of it by the end of next fiscal year. We have 3 years to spend it. So the first thing is what I'm proposing is that we not spend it all in 1 year, but we keep in mind that we have 3 years to spend it. So I'm proposing a $4 million expense. The fact that we put it in a budget doesn't mean that we have to spend it, but it certainly, if we need to spend it, it's already there. And I'm breaking it down, proposal as follows. We are allowed, under the terms of ARPA, to provide a term that's commonly been called hero pay to employees who were out there in the past year. As you know, the county government didn't stop working. Our convenience centers were up and running still. Sewer guys were out there working. Finance people were paying the bills so that everybody got paid in a timely fashion, and vendors were paid very quickly. Of course, public safety, we know that they were out there doing everything. So my proposal is that every county employee would receive one of these one-time allotments, as well as every part-time employee. And so my proposal is $2,000. They allow you to go up to $25,000. Obviously, I think that's far more than would be necessary, but I believe a $2,000 one-time bonus, to use that term, for every full-time county employee, and also $1,000 for every part-time county employee.
Where is that? Where is that?
That's
on
under
there?
full-time and part-time.
That's that $2,005,000 you're talking about.
No, sir, that's under full-time and part-time. That's where that money would.
It's $1,038,750.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
You're suggesting $1,038,750 one-time bonus for employees.
Plus, you'd have to put the FICA and workers' comp in. Yes, sir.
So we're going to spend about 1.3 million in bonus money because we're receiving free money from the federal government, who's already given everybody in the world free money, and that's why we can't hire people.
Okay.
Yes,
But I don't think ours is the same, Russell, to be
All right.
on the same page. Our employees are showing up. They're not sitting home.
Nothing
Yeah.
to do with our employees,
Right.
sorry. That's
And-
just a little bit of a soapbox. It's a sore subject for me.
I know
Sore
it is.
subject with everybody.
And you have a right to feel that way, but I just don't want the general public that's watching this thinking that the county's doing something, wrong with the employees when we're trying to award hours for coming to work and doing the right thing by the citizens of Kershaw County.
Well, we hadn't done anything yet.
Well,
well-
I think, Mr.
I just want to make my point. I mean, you're right, the budget hadn't been read for the third time, and any and all of this can be adjusted or changed. But I just want to have clarity.
Yeah.
I'm not interpreting Mr. Brazel as opposing this.
No.
No, I'm just,
I'm not either.
I'm trying to understand it.
That's a double negative there, okay?
He was just
All
giving
right.
free commentary. He's not charging for that.
Okay, so it's hero pay is what we're gonna call that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good, and that'll inform our discussions on Tuesday about pay rises and things of that nature.
Yes, sir.
Now, I think.
Mr. Chairman.
Can I just make one point?
Yeah, go ahead.
At your desk, everybody, is a fact sheet about ARPA and how that funds are to be used. And I think we all should read this when we come back in here. Ben, next week, we ought to understand what Mr. Carpenter is trying to deal with in terms of the rules that apply for how this money would be used. All right, I'm sorry, Ben, go ahead.
I'm struggling through the intellectual consistency of council giving $1 million through grants to private entities in the community because people are at risk of losing their jobs, or they did lose their jobs and they somehow needed to keep doors open. So there's a real risk there of a failure. But then also giving money because people are able to keep their jobs and they did their jobs. It just seems inconsistent to me. I'll have to struggle through that to philosophically understand how that's a value add.
Well, the fact is, the government told everybody in the private sector to shut down and go home, yet all government employees receive full pay. Is that,
Yeah, I mean,
is that kind of what you're saying?
I mean, that's kind of the
Correct.
inconsistency that I see.
I'm struggling through that too. Nothing against anybody that works at Kershaw County. I mean, God bless all of you. We appreciate everything you do. It's just
Well-
that the government gives away money and gives away money. If it moves, it's taxed. If it doesn't move, it's subsidized. That's just, was that Reagan that said that?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
man.
I don't know who said
But
it.
that's not where
I said that.
Yeah, but again, let me just say again, let's understand what the rules are, and each of you made good points. What the rules are for the use of this ARPA money that we're allegedly going to receive.
And the total is
So-
12.6. Is that right?
12.6 to 13, we'll really know when we get it. It's probably closer to 13 than 12.6.
Couple quick things. Big, I think the slide you gave us is about 2 million off, so that's why I came up with that number earlier. Because ours got 2,5,631, and yours has got 4.
Okay.
You know, so that's why I was off on my
I
numbers.
got you. Okay.
And I want to say that we have to also remember that we're local government. We don't control the state nor the federal government. And what I don't want to do is what this state has done in the past, not use funds that's coming out of the federal government that we're going to have to pay back eventually because all states will, and not take care of our own people. We've done that as a state. And I disagree with that as I would if we don't do anything good for our employees with this money. It's an opportunity to tell them thank you for what all they do, and it's a no-brainer for me, and I appreciate you putting it in the budget.
We've supported, I think everybody at council supported giving a pay raise, and you and I have discussed that, and I'm not against that at all. I feel very passionate about the fact that everybody needs to make money, and a fair amount of money. But we hadn't had any discussion until right now as to where we're going to spend
That's true.
the $13 million. And to stick it in front of me this morning and say, hey, we're going to give away $1.3 million to our employees without even being warmed up to it. Last time I didn't warm any of y'all up to my ideas. Not a single person voted to even put it on the floor except for, I think, Ben finally did, to even discuss it. So pardon me for being a little cold to the idea.
Mr. Chairman, I was
Yeah,
just going
go
to say,
ahead.
you know, I've got an 18-page packet that I just saw this morning that I have to understand.
And we all just saw it, and thank you very much.
And I also,
Right, right.
I also agree
Mr.
with
Chairman,
you
I got the floor, Mr.
about
Jones.
it being nice to you.
So, I just need to understand the rules on how this works, because it sounds like there are different silos in which you're able to spend the funds. And I have no understanding right now of the value add for the different silos. So I'll study up on it and consider it after I get to learn a little bit more.
What I'm hearing here is what I feel as well, is there's a lot of uncertainty about this, and it's evolving guidance, so don't beat up on the administrator. It's the first time most of us have seen it, first time I've seen it. So maybe we have a further discussion when we meet on Tuesday next week. Is that okay with everybody?
Sure thing.
Yeah, okay, good. Over to you.
Let me get this straight. You're taking federal money that we're going to get no matter what, and you're using it for the employees. Is that what I understand?
And let me
Sounds
add
good.
to that, Mr. Snodgrass. This money is not going to be reoccurring. I know we've got 13 million in 3 or 4 years to spend it, but he's trying to do it in the most responsible way, where it's a one-time hit, where it's not reoccurring, where we have to later find the money. And if I'm misspeaking, Mr. Carpenter, please cut me off. So by doing it in the bonuses means it's not reoccurring in the salaries the next year unless this council and you present it to us if you want to do something similar the following year. Am I correct by saying that?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay.
If I can.
Yeah, sure.
I too, listen, I want to make sure our employees get everything they can. I'm their champion this year, no question about it. But I do need to look at this a little bit longer to see exactly how, when, what, where. That's what I didn't mean to interrupt my colleague here, but I'm in agreement that we need to really look at it. It's hard when you see it for the first time.
Well,
But
obviously, there's no vote on it today, so obviously.
Yeah, exactly. But I will say this, nobody's beating up on the administrator. That's why we pay you the big bucks to answer our questions.
I'm going to need to see y'all like y'all are seeing red flags that for some reason I'm not seeing. So we'll go to lunch and y'all can explain it to me.
Well, this is just one, if I could.
You're going to have to file lunch that day.
I got the floor.
What's that?
You're going to have to file lunch.
Okay.
I've got the floor. I haven't told anybody rudely to be quiet. I'm trying to be nice. Listen, when's the first time you heard about this?
Today, but it sounds like a great idea. Every county is getting this money, and it sounds like the administrator is using it based on the
Sure.
policy. I mean, what I know is during the pandemic, and whether we're still in it or not, who knows, whatever. But the landfill and the trash was always open, even when my family was home quarantined. It was always open. They were still running trash and keeping solid waste going in our county. If I called 911, Gerald's guys were still going to show up. So would Gary and his guys show up.
How about the
They
sheriff?
were all sheriff,
Detention center?
Detention
everybody. So I've always wanted to do something for the employees because they have been the quintessential essential employee. So
Now,
honestly, I just for the 5 minutes it just kind of hit me. I'm like, wait a minute, what are we upset about? So I'm catching up.
Nobody's upset.
Oh, okay.
Here's what I'm saying. I need to look at it.
Gotcha.
Okay, and I think that's what Ben and Russell were saying. We need to look at it.
No, I mean, and here's the thing. They got paid to do all that. There were people, David, that were sent home and told they couldn't work.
Good point, Russell.
They couldn't provide for their family because the government told them they couldn't. Now the government's taking money out of their check and they're giving it to other people who got to work. That's what I have an issue with.
But that's not our argument. You run for Ralph Norman's seat if that's where that argument's is taking place. We're just we may not like the game, but we're playing by the rules that has been given to us. That's how I see it anyway.
But this document that none of us have read probably doesn't say we have to do this. We got a slew of needs.
Oh, that's why we're going to meet on Tuesday, everybody.
All right, good enough.
Okay, good enough. We're going to meet on Tuesday.
Sounds good, but I tell you what, good points, Russell and Ben.
All right, can we move ahead, please?
All right. Also, as we know, there are a number of studies that we need to do, we've been talking about. So we set aside money in there for these one-time studies under professional services. Again, that's just an estimate of cost. Doesn't mean it would cost us near that much money, but it gives us the flexibility to do the studies that we need as we look to where we move the county forward. Land and sewer plant, same thing. As we look to expand, we're going to need to do engineering studies. We'll need to expand the plant itself, acquire some more land for it. So again, putting in a round figure there. The council chamber project, as you know, we discovered some of the inadequacies of our system. So this would let us upgrade so we can live stream easily so that council members aren't having to go through the system we do right now. When we're live streaming, everybody would have monitors at their desk and you'd be able to access information a whole lot better than you are on a tablet. And then the COVID mitigation recovery is money I put in there that gives us the flexibility, should council desire, in the course of a year, to respond to things related to COVID. We still don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if there'll be a third wave. So that gives us the ability, again, if it's in there and not spent, it stays there. It doesn't go away. It doesn't cost us anything to not spend it. But that gives us flexibility going forward.
And so we'll address this in detail after everybody gets a chance to ramp up to the paper you passed out
Absolutely.
just
Yes,
this
sir.
morning. Okay?
Okay. Victims Advocate. Again, the Victims Advocate is affiliated at the Sheriff's Office. The revenue comes from fees that are charged to guilty individuals in the criminal system, about $108,000. We have to spend every bit of that on the Victims Advocate program, so $108,000. We have a single Victims Advocate working for us. Moving on, the SRO. The state puts money in starting last year to help pay towards SROs. This allowed us to bring in about 4 more SROs. So this is where that money. So part of the money comes from the school district, part of the money comes from the state for our SRO program. Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm just flipping through this one packet. Quick question. Under the ARPA stuff, are we allowed to reimburse ourselves for the 1 million in grants that was given out?
Yes, sir.
That's a qualifier?
I believe it, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, moving to the sewer. This is the operational budget, and so this is, this reflects the cost of
I'm sorry, we're losing track here.
Where we at?
page 80.
Page 8. I think it's been put together slightly differently.
I think we lost page.
I think we've lost a page.
Oh, here it is. It's, yep.
It's page
What
80.
page is it?
It's page 80.
80. Okay,
At the
I
bottom.
found it.
There's a title page that you're going, so it looks like you're at the end, but you're
It's
not.
behind the title page.
Yeah.
Okay, page 80. Okay,
Again, revenues for the system operation, about 3.6 million. The bulk of that comes from fees, user fees, impact fees, and the fee in lieu from Packlet Milliken, which will soon be South Carolina Water. So 3.6 million. As you see, it is dropping down. Each year we lose with depreciation the revenue that comes in from those sewer use fees that we receive from them. The expenses, again, the bulk of their expenses are going to be paying to bond payments for revenue is the single largest line item of $740,000. Our utilities are almost $300,000 for salaries. Capital equipment. And then there's a transfer to the general fund in there as well that Mr. Brazel was pointing out.
Where's that line item? I'm sorry.
That line item's on page 82.
well, 82.
All right, yeah, so,
There it is.
Mr. Jones, what we were talking about earlier, fourth one from the bottom, the transfer to general fund,
What page?
page 82, sir.
82.
I'm on it.
You see the
Thank you.
$250,000 transfer?
Yes.
So that, if we weren't making that transfer, that'd take care of half of the tax need. And so really all we're looking for is another $260,000 to relieve ourselves of the need for any
The
tax.
sewer district tax.
Yes, sir.
I'm listening.
So we're almost there, sir.
Oh, I'm listening. You got my attention.
So
Once
there's
we
no
see-
need to transfer the 250,000 out if we're going to operate it as a business. And that was kind of to everybody's point, Mr. Tucker's and Snodgrass and Chairman. And I think we can make this happen and relieve the taxpayer.
I hope you're right. And I'm looking forward to seeing the details.
Mr. Brazel, just my rough calculation, if I might, Mr. Chairman. That number divided by Mr. Carpenter's little over 2,200 comes up to about $118 per year. So you divide by 12 and you get a monthly amount that gets you to the break-even number you're talking about.
You just did a rate study, didn't you?
I think I did. I don't
Rate
know if it
study's
takes-
done.
I don't know if it
Nice.
takes 6 months or
Some more
not.
of that Pine Grove math.
Pine Grove Consulting over there. You guys are doing great.
Longtown Road math for me.
Long time.
Mr. Carpenter,
Yes.
what is YCAM doing? They back to hauling to the river?
No, sir. That revenue line item that's in the current budget, they had some incursions to their permit, and the county had to fine them. So that represents the money that they paid to the county as fines to us for exceeding their permitted discharge capabilities.
Okay. That's a mouthful, isn't it?
Where are you looking?
Page 80.
Last line of revenue.
Revenue.
Yeah, I got it, yeah.
So we obviously don't anticipate that they're going to have any excursions this year, but we did last year, and so that
Okay.
that reflects that money.
And our income from PACCOM Milligan, which is going to be Southwest soon, or South Carolina Waters, whatever you're calling them, is down to 1.1 million
Yes, sir.
from the 200 already?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I would point out to you on the bottom of page 81, stormwater services. This is something we've mentioned in the past. I'll keep mentioning it. Stormwater is becoming more and more of an issue for the county.
It is.
We have it in the sewer fund, but at some point, we're probably going to have it broken out as a separate department with its own employees, because stormwater is viewed by most people as drainage. It's viewed by DHEC as water quality. And so we're putting more effort into drainage these days, and it's becoming a significant part of what our public works do, is working on the drainage systems when it should be a stormwater working on those systems instead of public works. They should be working on roads and the basic ditches, but not the conveyance systems that move it all the way to the rivers and the creeks. So I point that out to you, just so you can just be aware that at some point we'll be probably talking about stormwater again. The fees we show from stormwater, we run the program for the town of Elgin. They reimburse us on the actual expenses we incur on their behalf, and that's what that's expected to be. You look at their capital on page 86. Again, some equipment, bypass stumps, again, putting in some pipe, things like that. These are known expenses. Then every year, we always have the unknown, unanticipated expenses, like we've had this past year on US 1, when the system there collapsed over there near Bullware, and we had to replace that. So that's always a big part of our budget, is just getting out there fixing stuff under capital. Okay. All right, so now we get into the good stuff.
Okay,
Fire,
let's just
EMS.
recap what I got so far. We have a Tuesday meeting on pay, right, Jimmy? And the Tuesday meeting will also readdress ARPA CARES money. You guys okay with that? All right, go ahead.
Okay. So, as we've discussed already previously, that we have several issues in front of us that we needed to address this year in the current budget. One of it is that we need to stabilize our general fund.
So we don't have these charts. We have to
Okay.
read them.
Yeah, right.
Okay, guys.
That we need to build several buildings. We need to build a Cassett Fire Station. We need to replace our EMS station, number 2, and possibly number 1. We need a new public works facility. We know coming forward that there's a realistic chance of losing the FILO from the hospital system. The council has indicated that they want to continue implementing the fire plan, so additional funds need to be found for that. And then the capital fund also needs money in order to do the projects that we do every year in the capital. So what was it going to take to balance the budget this year? Well, in the general fund, approximately $250,000 is needed in order to balance the budget, the equivalent of about 1 mil. New buildings, a fire station, an EMS station, and a public works building, about $6.5 million. That would be the equivalent of 1.8 mils. To replace our EMS FILO, about $1 million, that's the equivalent of 4 mils. The fire plan, to implement that, 1.4 million to implement that. And that can come from several, one of which would be to increase the millage that they're allowed to do by the maximum, which is half a mil. Adding to the current $29 parcel fee, another $31, and then adding a $10 vehicle fee. Those 3 mechanisms let us get the 1.4 million needed for fire. And then the 1.2 million we're going to spend on capital items from our reserves, the excess funds that we previously discussed.
Mr. Combs, so the vehicle fee would be $45?
$10. $10 for fire and 35 for public works.
And then the parcel fee would go up $31
To 60, yes,
to
sir.
$60, and then the road maintenance, excuse me, the vehicle fee would go from $35 to $45.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right.
All right.
And
so
let me ask one quick question. This is vital. Under Act 388, does this council have the authority to increase this type of millage?
Yes, sir, and I'll be explaining how we do
Okay,
that. But
okay.
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Very good,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay,
We're
so,
gonna break it down one step
Yeah,
at a
that's
time.
what we're
Yeah.
going to do right
okay,
now.
so let's look at fire.
Can we start at the top?
Yeah. Okay. The fire plan the council approved and wants us to continue would have in the next 2 years us adding a third shift at Blaney, building a cassette station, begin a lease purchase plan for our vehicles, replace outdated equipment system-wide, upgrade the supply lines we use, and begin renovations of existing stations. The rest of the plan would then hire the remaining shifts to move cassette to 24/7, continue renovating our existing stations, continue our vehicle replacement, and finish replacing outdated equipment and supply lines. So the budget itself for fire. Our current budget as it stands allows us to generate roughly $3.2 million for the operation.
Do we have a copy of this?
It's right there. Yes, it should be in your, page 60. Oh, they don't have the fire slides?
Could we get that, please?
Sorry, I thought that was in the packet.
I like to make notes.
Yeah, no, I
Me too.
apologize. I thought that was in the packet. Thank you.
Yeah, we don't have that one.
Can we just take a quick break until we can get them?
Sorry, it's in mine too. I apologize.
Oh, that's no worries.
That'd be good.
We'll come back to it. You
Okay.
keep going here so we can understand what we got.
Okay, so what this shows is the implementation of our proposed. Currently under Act 388, we can raise millage by 1/2 of a mill. So that shows, that reflects in there, the increase of 1/2 of a mill. It shows also then the imposition of the additional fee on the improved parcels only. And then it shows the imposition of a fee on vehicles. So you see the increase of revenue from the current year to next year. Where does it go? Obviously, it starts with our employees. Full-time, part-time, the costs that are necessary to work with them. We continue our point system for volunteers, as volunteers are still critical to what we do and how we do it. As you look at our spending in there, obviously, we start spending more on building maintenance as we start renovating our existing buildings. You also see that we show in the grant match, about halfway down, the $100,000. We have put in for a grant that would replace our breathing apparatus, about $1 million grant. If we get that grant, then that would be the match required for it.
That's including Lugol Fire Department as well.
Are
Did they come in for the same grant?
they part of that grant?
Yeah, I talked to them about it. Okay.
We wouldn't pay their match.
Huh?
We wouldn't pay their match. Okay.
What was the overall budget again? Proposed 3 point,
The
what?
overall budget is $3.2 million.
Let's take 3 minutes, if you would,
Okay.
to get that stuff in front of us. I'm
All
having
right.
a hard time keeping up, looking back
Sure,
at this.
I understand.
All right, we're on a 5-minute break. Be back here at 11:20.
That's good. I can use
Excellent.
All right.
This is interesting.
Yeah.
know, I know. You gotta understand me. No, I don't do Cash App yet. I ain't up to date. My whole family tell me, I tell them, man, I ain't got time. But, how you doing? How's your family? Right, right. That's right. You've been a Mustang man ever since. So it end up selling it, and we end up, because having children, that changes your life, as you well know. And so we end up, I sold that, brought that Suburban, and the Z71 truck. Just got into bigger vehicles. That's right. That's right. That's right. Well, I think one of the cleanest ones around with the key and all that. So you doing okay? I appreciate it, man. I'm always asking about you when I see your brother. Yes, because I see him quite often. But you tell the wife I said hi too, and I'll get lunch. She just owe me, but I will tell her when I talk to her today. You asked about it, and I'll get a lunch when they speak. Okay, well, I'll hit you back by the weekend. Still live. Okay, I'll hit you back this week. Thank you. And let you know some dates, okay? Okay, well, nothing's gonna happen this month, I can tell you that now. We're already at the end of the month, so, okay? All right, thank you, buddy. All right. Hey, guys, I think we're still live. Okay, I'm just letting you know. You got it?
Back up. Yeah, he's got it. He's got it. We got our operator over there. Okay, we're back live again. Mr. Jones will be back when he gets back. I've asked Mr. Carpenter to back out a minute before we get lost in the details, because people immediately see there's an increase in fee without seeing that there's an offset, as I said at the start, where this is a transformative year for us, where we're restructuring debt so as to improve services at least cost to the citizens. And that's what we're trying to do. It's been a long time coming. You all agreed to it last year, but COVID landed like a 500-pound gorilla in the middle of our budget process, and we weren't able to do it. But this year we can imaginatively reconstruct. So over to you, Vic.
Mr. Chairman, could I share for context?
Yeah,
with the other
please.
full-time?
Yeah, please do.
Vic and members of council, I just went through some rough numbers. We talked about them in the past, but when looking at best practices in full-time fire in Kershaw County, I looked to Camden and Lugoff Fire to figure out roughly what they were spending per person within their fire district. Now, these numbers will change based on the census, obviously, but Camden's budget, whenever staff prepared this report last, which I think was last year, was about $2 million. They roughly had 8,500 people within their service area, and that was about $235 per person per year in the fire budget. For Lugoff Fire, it was $1.327 million last time this report was prepared, and that's about 8,000 people within their service area, and that equates to about $165 or so per person per year spent on fire. And then for Kershaw County, so that's everywhere outside of those two districts I just mentioned, currently we serve about 46,000 people, and our current budget at 1.7 million, and that would include the fee as I understand it, is about $38 per person per year. And so and that's with the full time that we have now. So the budget proposal, just running through some of the numbers that Mr. Carpenter put before us, of 3.2 million serving 46,000 people would put us at $69 roughly per person per year. So still over 100% less than what Lugoff Fire currently spends for fire service within their district. So I don't think this is necessarily unreasonable in any way. And if this actually accomplishes our goal, we're doing it at a much better value, or at least, well, maybe that's unfair to say, but we're doing it a lot more efficiently than some of the other departments within the county.
Excellent.
Ben,
Excellent.
I have a question. I know that you have the fee in there, but did you put the millage in there as well? Because that has to be apples to apples by including the mills.
Yeah, that's overall budget. So
Yeah.
what I just mentioned is our overall budget at 1.7. That 38 per person included the fee and the mill.
Okay.
Yeah, frankly, I don't see how our rural fire department, volunteer and full-time, have been able to achieve what they've done.
It's the volunteers.
But
And then-
with
and then a
poor
lean-
equipment and underpaid and understaffed and under-facilitized, and coming, as we made the point 4 years ago when we embarked on this, you get what you pay for. But what I propose now, Jimmy, while you're out of the room, I asked Vic to back out of the first slides he showed us and talk a little bit about where the money comes from. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, well, I just wanted to say something based on one of your comments and Mr. Connell's. I do not disagree with our fire service. I support funding them. We may have differences on how that, I disagree with y'all on how we're going to fund it. However, when we talk about how much they've done with so little, they have, absolutely. But so has Public Works, so has 911, so has the law enforcement. You know, I think when we say that, we're talking about the entire county staff. They do so much with so little. Thank you.
Absolutely. Over to you, Vic.
Mr. Chair, members of council, earlier I was showing where I saw the needs for the county coming and some of the impacts financial that they would have, and where would that money come from? And currently the county has 10.6 mills on the books for debt service. That pays existing GO bonds that have been issued from a variety of projects through the years. The county has the ability to take money that is unspent in our bond fund and use it to pay off some of that debt and then refinance the remaining debt at market rates that are lower than when the debt was originally issued. And by doing that, we can free up 7.3 mills that is currently on the tax notices and take that off of the tax notices for debt. If we do that, then that allows us to do the following. That allows us to put the 1 mill into the general fund. It allows us to use 4 mills for the EMS stabilization, or if or when the hospital is sold. It allows us to put 0.5 mil for fire, and then 1.8 mills to issue a new bond. Yes, sir.
What would that 1.8 mils,
About 6.5 million.
what would that bond pay for?
The bond would pay for 3 things proposed: fire station in Cassett, EMS station, and Public Works.
I got a
Public
question,
Works facility.
and I know you probably got the answer. If we can issue a bond out of the general fund that's supported by millage out of the general fund to support fire, why can't we pay the firemen out of the same fund?
I've asked the attorney, and they say that the capital aspect of it is a different role. And we can do it for capital, we just can't do it for operations.
Can't pay for people.
Can't pay for people.
But wouldn't, wouldn't the fact that we're building a county fire station also be taxing others twice? And that was the whole reason why we couldn't take it out of the general fund to pay the employees?
So I asked that question, and I was told that
Yeah, it's the
it
same
could be done.
question.
You
It's
know,
not,
that there's.
Act
there's-
388
there's
doesn't make our life.
I need
precedent
one
that allows
person
you to do
talk at a
that.
time. I can't hear nothing.
There's precedent that allows you to do that. A fire station, an
Absolutely.
EMS station is viewed as long-term.
Would you
They'll
start
be there
over,
for-
please?
A fire station and EMS station are long-term investments. They're there for 50, 100 years. Operational is just that. It's 1 year, 1 year, 1 year. It's only a year at a time. So you can invest in fixed assets using the good faith of the county, but you can't use that same concept for the people that are out there working it.
Even if it's double taxation.
Yes, sir.
It's not double taxation, but it's certainly stupid, isn't it?
Well, that's the reason why I was told that we couldn't fund the fire station out of the general, I mean, the gentleman that would so needed out of the general fund, where money's available.
Yes, sir.
I still want to chase that.
Let me ask you a question. Is it double taxation?
If. I would
That tells me it is.
I would defer to the attorney.
Your body language tells me it is double taxation. But anyway, thank you. I'm getting a look from Mr. Snodgrass over here. I like that look in your eye.
Yeah, the point is, most of the moral dilemmas down here at squad level and platoon level are caused by the higher headquarters. And in this case, the state government has really made our job hard. Dave?
No, I'm not Mr. DeBose, but I mean, I think in this instance it is because you've got Camden residents who are paying millage, city millage that's paying for Camden firemen, Lugolf residents who are paying millage for Lugolf firemen, and we're asking, hey, can you guys also pony up and pay for some county firemen as well? So I guess in this instance, I guess it is, but I'm not Mr. DeBose, and that's a lot. That's a shorter answer than what Mr. DeBose would give.
And a county fire building, exactly. But we can the building, but we can't. But you know what would make a lot of sense to me? If we're getting $13 million and we're about to issue $6.5 million worth of bonds, $6.5 million, we'd still have a lot left. We could just pay for these things out of the money. Can we not do that?
You mean the ARPA money,
Yeah.
Russell?
They are pretty specific, and as you go through the guidance that I gave you, that question comes up, can you use it for general county infrastructure like roads, buildings? They say no. You
So
can't.
what Russell is getting at is why we need to meet on Tuesday. And so all of us look at this 18-page thing and decide on Tuesday if we want to come back in and explore those new ways of moving money around, okay?
Is that what you're thinking, Russell?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, sir.
What he said, is that what you're thinking? What the chairman just said, is that what you're thinking?
Well, I'm thinking we use money we're getting from the federal government instead of incurring more debts, what I'm thinking. And yeah, I mean, I think that's what he's saying too. Is
Okay.
we need to explore
Yeah.
what we can and can't do with it. But we talked earlier, and it can be used for sewer infrastructure.
Sewer, water, broadband, yes, sir. Those are the three enumerated areas we can use.
Who would pay that money back?
Nobody. It's a grant.
Nobody.
It's a grant, okay.
That's that 13 million that we're going to get from the federal
Oh,
government.
yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to avoid debt and avoid new taxation.
Ms.
Thank you,
Brazel,
sir.
it's not the way I think any of us would have structured any of this, but it's the way it's been structured. It's the way it's given to us and told that we have to spend it in ways. I would much rather not issue a bond while I got money sitting in the bank that I could use for the same purpose. But they're pretty clear that we can't use it for general infrastructure of the county. That's something they spell out very quickly. Roads, bridges, buildings, things like that, we can't use it for.
Can't use it for what you need it for, but here you go anyway.
That's it.
I'm not beating you up. I know you.
I think we're all on the same
frustrating.
side of this one. So, but
Yeah.
it's, I'm trying to do the best I can to wisely support our county in my recommendations to the council.
If I may,
You
real-
do a good job, sir.
If I may, real quick, I want to continue to remind us on the fire discussion that what we're doing there is we're not just kind of doing a twist of a screwdriver and a tap of a hammer. We are totally transforming that whole system. So when you look at whether it's added millage, added fee, or whatever, we're taking a volunteer system that's operated off roughly 10.6 mils, and we're trying to put it on the same echelon, the same level as other services that operate off of 26, 30 plus mills. And so I think when we look at that, I think we need to be reminded of what we're doing there. We're transforming the whole system. It's not just a raise so that these guys can get a new truck or this or that. It's totally, we are changing how Kershaw County Fire Service delivers fire service. And, you know, I don't know if that's helpful to you.
You don't have to sell it. I'm with you.
Yeah, I'm just saying,
That
like, 'cause
needs
when
to
you look at it, you're like, wow, that's a lot. But
No, it doesn't.
we started, you know, we're trying to get on the same playing field, you know. So
I get it
it's-
completely, and I support it. I support that completely. Where my frustration comes from is 4 months in, I'm expected to try to solve a problem that's due to a broken system that's been broken for years and broken on many levels. I mean, you know, and the only answer is, well, we need more money from the taxpayer. That's my level of frustration. That's where it comes from. It's not about providing the service.
And hopefully the General Assembly will help us out next year, you know, because what I feel for are those who are homesteaders. So, you know, if we could switch to the true millage, then that would, you know, our homesteaders would still get their, you know, is that correct, Mr. Vick? Okay. So that's why I'm hopeful that next year we can switch to the millage, so it will be more equitable even for the homesteaders.
Mr. Brazel, you support this structure of funding the fire service, or you're not sure?
Oh, I'm not sure yet. No,
Okay.
I support the fire service in itself. I'm trying to figure out how to fund it. No different than what you stated earlier.
Well, let's go on down the chart, because fire service is a big chunk.
Yes, sir.
But there are other pieces. Go on down that.
Yes, sir.
please.
As we discussed last week with the capital fund, we fund that each year by using the unallocated reserve balance. Council has directed staff to recommend how we spend that unallocated reserve, with the first priority being capital. So the 1.3 million that we need would come from that unrestricted reserve balance. So that would pay for our capital. And then the final is the $6.5 million bond. That would be used to build the EMS station, fire station, and a public works facility.
Okay.
Can
So
we
all
break
this-
that down?
I'm sorry.
Can we break down the 1.3 million to pay for capital needs? Okay.
Yes, sir, that was last week. We went over all that sheet last week.
Okay.
So
Capital
we
reserves.
talked about that last week as far as the actual expenses, where they go, trucks here and things like that.
And sheriff's cars. and
Sheriff's
so on.
cars. yes,
Okay,
sir.
all right, that's what that
15
is.
cars for the sheriff.
The $6.5 million bond to fund EMS, fire stations, and public works. Can we break that down?
Sure. Right now, the estimated cost for the fire station, 1.4 million. Estimated cost for an EMS station, 1.1, and public works, 4. We would do the public safety buildings first, and then whatever is left is what we would put into a public works facility.
Sounds to me, and it seems feasible to me, that 1.4 for a fire station is probably reasonable. 1.1 for EMS is probably reasonable. Public works needs attention. I've been there. I mean, it's the cost of red iron and concrete's higher than it's ever been.
4 million would probably not be a final out there. It would be a first stage. It would get the employees into decent facilities, modern safety code facilities. It would not rebuild the entire public works complex.
The 4 million wouldn't?
No, sir. No, we're going to have to totally redo the whole curb and guttering out there. You're going to have stormwater and drainage issues because of the contaminants that are out there. You're going to have facilities to house your equipment. Right now, our equipment just sits out in the open, things like that. So you'd have to have several different.
What equipment?
Our heavy
Graveyard.
equipment, graders, motor graders.
I see those things sitting all
compactors.
over the county. We got one that's been sitting in Pine Grove for years. It
That's-
just sits there out in the weather.
I understand, sir. But, it's generally, if you can put your trucks and all undercover, they'll last longer. It also lets you do maintenance on them easier when they're undercover.
How big do we want to build that building?
I'll be glad to go over those with you. We've got a meeting later this week to go over where we're looking at. But the first structure would again be probably about I'm guessing probably a 12,000 square foot building.
How big is the building that's there now?
It's more than that, but it's got a shop in it. It's got things like that in it as well.
Could we look at a remodel? Would anybody be interested, guys?
What?
Would anybody be interested in
Yes,
remodeling the building?
yes.
Because you
You
could
can't
take
remodel.
all
Have you been out there?
Yeah, I've been out there.
Ain't nothing to remodel.
Yeah, it is.
No, it's not.
I've done it.
I was out there on Thursday.
Are you a professional builder?
I am not a professional builder, but I did stay at Holiday Inn Express recently. But I've been out there. You cannot.
I just hooked on with
I've always said, Mr. Snodgrass, you are the man to watch up here.
No, I
I'm just saying, I don't think there's anything to remodel, man.
I can
mean,
show
I
you-
feel you.
I
But
can show you a before and after of a similar building, and it looks brand new today. What you could do is you could take all the sheet metal off the outside, all the sheet metal off the roof, the
getting it
ceiling.
operational.
We always do.
Well, you're talking about $4 million.
We talk about buying a lawnmower up here and argue about it. I think this is a valid point that Mr. Russell's bringing up.
We have argued about this, touche.
So we could put sheet metal all the way around it, new sheet metal, new roof. You could clean the floors, you could paint the floors, and you could put new office space in there. It would look brand new.
You'd have to run plumbing. It's only got a single bathroom in it, so you'd have to have plumbing run in it. Again, we have to do remediation anytime you do more than a certain percentage on the building. You got to totally do it for ADA compliance,
Yep.
things like that.
Handicap bathrooms, all that.
Yes, sir.
Break
I guess
room,
what
right?
I'm saying is that we're not going to spend money for the sake of spending it. But, you know, the site work that we need to do, fencing, landscape, and things like that, we need to put in new scales, camera systems, what have you. I don't think from camera systems, what have you, I don't think 4 million would cover everything we need to do out there, but 4 million gets us well
Mr.
down that
Brazel,
road.
if I may, but you know, here's the thing. I was talking to a business owner, this goes right back to what you're talking about. I was talking to a business owner who said, you know, when I first built my business, he said, I had outdoor drive-in service only. He said, but as I built my business, then I finally went to have an indoor service as well. You know, sometimes you can't have it all at one time. We've got so many needs and it's just not enough money. And I think Mr. Brazel's suggestion up here is very worthwhile looking into. We don't know until we look into it. Is it worth maybe saving some dollars to remodel?
And I think y'all understand that absolutely we're going to look into everything we can. That's just, again, I've put in what we could do up to. We can do up to 6.5 million. So we've got those buildings we need to build in Public Works. Obviously, though it's important, we need to do the ambulance and the fire station first. So when they're done, then we'll try to make work whatever's left.
And you don't hear me fussing about the fire or the EMS. And look, for the public work guys, I get it. It's old and it's bad. But I just, for the life of me, can't see spending $4 million out there. And
We
then
can
you
do it
say
for-
that ain't even gonna get it.
If we can do it for 1.8, we'll do it for 1.8. But I mean, I'm just, or whatever. You know, we're not looking to spend 4 million. That's just the amount of money that right now the estimates coming back say that that's what it would cost.
Yep, and here's the thing, and David, please forgive me. I'm not trying to be a know-it-all or anything, but I mean, the concrete and the red iron ain't gonna change. You can dig it all up, you'll spend $500,000 hauling that building off. But the concrete and the red iron, we're not looking to make a bigger building. The concrete's gonna be the same whether it's old concrete or new concrete. You can refinish the concrete, you can paint it, there's ways to improve it. You could powder coat the red iron if you like. The red iron hadn't rusted, it's not about to break.
But it is
The
gonna be
bones
bigger.
are there.
It's going to be larger, and they got to do raised scales. They got to build a tower so they can look down into the loads that's coming in.
Well, you could still do that.
You know, so it's going to take.
You could do that. You could
All right.
still do that.
Okay. Well, the larger issue here is we're trying to achieve things that we all voted on, said we were going to do, in the goals and objectives, and trying to do it at least cost. So if we back out and look at what Vic is trying to achieve, he's trying not to raise taxes and still achieve what we need to do with fire with a modest increase in fees.
Have a question.
Is that what we're doing, Vic?
Yes, sir.
So if you would just kind of tell us how that looked and what went through your mind when you constructed this chart.
Yes, sir. Well, starting with the reconstituting our debt. Obviously, if we are able to defease the bonds, free up the millage, then that gives council the ability to reallocate that millage elsewhere. Citizens are currently paying that millage across the county, so you're able to reallocate that millage in proposed areas where I know that under Act 388 we can do it without running afoul. We can't put it into fire because of Act 388. So we're able to I put as much as I can in fire, which is $500,000. And then, again, with EMS and the general fund to make them whole as well. So trying to move that around as far as the fire is concerned, as Mr. Snodgrass indicated, the council, if this is approved as such, it'll generate the revenue that we need to be able to move into that full plan of building, move into that full plan of staffing and buying the equipment. Then if the General Assembly allows us to switch it to a millage next year, we could do so, which would benefit people at the lower end of the income scale significantly, and plus it would have industry start paying into, as well as commerce, start paying into it at a rate more reflective of what their impact is, and would allow us to get rid of those fees. So that's what was going through my mind, is trying to make it no impact on the millage side to the citizens at all. And so this does it so there's no millage impact to the citizens. It just takes millage they're already paying and allocates in other areas of the county operations.
Right. So does everybody understand the basic concept? And we're getting down in each detail, certainly, but is the basic concept understood?
Who's going to pay the $6.5 million bond?
The 1.8 mills from the
And who's paying the 1.8 mils?
taxpayers.
Okay.
And where does that 1.8 mils is currently out there, but it's being reapportioned, so it's not an increase in taxes. Is that correct?
Correct. They're currently paying
So is that understood, Jimmy? There's not an
So-
increase.
Well, let me ask, I know I'm not quite clear yet, so there won't be a tax increase at all for what we're talking about?
The bottom line of what the millage is won't change. And the line
Kind
items
of a
that add up
P&L
to
game,
it, they would change. So you're on your tax bill, you're going to get millage for property taxes, you're going to get millage for debt, you're going to get millage for sewer if you're in that area, you're going to get millage for fire if you're in that area. Then it all adds up to bottom line. That bottom line won't change, just in where you're putting it in the line items will change.
So I can't find anything not to like about that. It does provide things that you all said were important. You all voted for it unanimously, but the how is what we're talking about now. And what we did is we went back to Mr. Carpenter and said, find economies in our financial structure where we can give value, that value that we agreed on, at best, least cost to the taxpayer. And I think he's done a magnificent job getting there. Now, as to the details, I think that's another matter. But I think on the strategic level, can you agree to the basic idea that we're going to defease these bonds and move millage and money around as to get the citizens what they need without increasing taxes?
What I see, Mr. Chairman, is an increase in the fire fee from $29 to $60. What I see is a road maintenance fee increase from $35 to $45.
I'm not sure what you're talking about, Jimmy.
Well, okay, I'll repeat it. What I say I'm sure about, everything we're talking about is that it says up there, increase existing fire fee from $29 to $60, and the vehicle fee from $35 to $45.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, the fees go up. That was very clear.
Well,
Yeah.
we keep talking about there's not going to be any increase to the taxpayers when actually there is.
Taxes, Jimmy.
What, sir, let me say this. A fee is worse than a tax, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. And
It's a tax in disguise.
good. Okay.
Thank you.
So are there any other dissensions from this basic construct here that does what we think what we asked Vic to do?
I want to say that the restructure was absolutely fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
The bond restructure and freeing up $1.6 million was, I mean, absolutely perfect. When we looked at that early on, I mean, that's the kind of stuff you do and to get the job done and free up the money. That was phenomenal. So thank you for all that hard work, and I, for one, agree to that portion of this discussion 110%. I think it was great.
Also,
Go ahead, Dave.
Okay, just real quick, I think it's important to clarify that the fire fee, if it would be imposed, is not the entire county. This is a fee on the fire service district. So, if someone lives in East Camden and they're on City of Camden water, they're not going to accrue this fee because they already pay a fire fee through their water bill. So I think it's important to, when you see this specific thing, it's an increase, but it's an increase in service. So to a very specific area of the county, not the entire county.
Mr. Chairman, I was going to say,
Yes, sir.
I think these are some great moves that we're making. And as Mr. Snodgrass mentioned, this is you ultimately pay for value, is what we're trying to do. So if this can move us to full-time fire service throughout the county, which would equate to reduced response times, increased responses to actual calls, and we can do it for over 100% less than the next closest full-time fire department that we can compare ourselves to, I think it's great. I actually think it's great. Because the prior system, as we've discussed over the last 4 to 5 years now, is not sustainable. We can't respond to the population growth and increasing calls that we have with the volunteer-only system. That's been the baseline for all of this, and it's brought us to this point. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. Well, I guess the other piece is, are we agreeing that where the money goes? And that was the point that Russell was bringing about. Are we getting value for money on the public works? I think we all agree public works was constructed when I was a second lieutenant on the East German border in 1970, and it's too darn old. It's 50 years old, and whether we want to refurbish or reconstruct or do a phased approach is, I think, germane. But we got to start somewhere, and the recommendation of the professional staff is start with this phased approach with some $4 million of that bond going in that direction. So that's where that discussion lies, I think. Okay, well, all right. Vic, do you want to go through each budget line sheet
Yep.
now?
So
Okay,
now
we
we'll go
can
back to
up
fire.
and
Everybody
get into
has,
the details now. All right.
everybody has the fire budget in front of them,
Okay.
I
Let's see.
trust. So again, we show under 2122, the reflected amount of revenue that we would receive under the proposed plan. Total of 3.2 million. That's on page 60.
Okay.
And then the expenditures, again, we would add the shift start adding those shifts. Therefore, you see the increase in full-time.
Yep.
And the fringes that go with it. Again, we start renovating stations. So building and grounds maintenance jumps significantly as we do that. You also notice, again, as we mentioned before, the grant match is in there in order to, hopefully, we receive the grant for all of our air supply. If not, then we'll have to pay $1 million. So we have to anticipate that as a possibility. You see the break? Yes, sir.
I talked to Lugoff, and what happened was apparently there was a big grant maybe 10, 20 years ago, and those things expire, and that apparatus must work or people die. And we did it all at one time, and here we are about to do it again all at one time. That means some future council will be faced with a block issue again, block obsolescence.
One of the things that this budget will do is we'll start moving into purchasing new ones every year versus
Yeah, we've gotta
waiting
do
on it
that.
to expire all at once.
We
and then
have
it
to do
drop
that.
However much it'll be when they
Yeah.
expire. So our budget and future budgets will start reflecting that we're replacing them now on a schedule versus using them until they die.
That's wonderful. And does that also apply to our EMS people as well? Because they have, extraordinary equipment that is very expensive. And if we can do that, that would be terrific.
Well, generally, every time we buy a new truck for EMS, it's going to be equipped with whatever the current standards
I
are.
see. So you do it by truck.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
And-
thank you.
And generally, you normally have a couple of years head start notice when significant changes are coming down, so you can plan for it.
I got a quick question.
Sure.
Buildings and grounds maintenance.
Yes, sir.
It's going from 60,000 to 205,000.
Yes, sir. That's the renovations for the existing stations. So we start over the next couple of years, we'll renovate the existing volunteer stations throughout the county. So that's reflecting money being put into them, new roofs, new air conditioners, new whatevers that they need for their stations.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. And again, capital equipment. Again, we'll start purchasing the new vehicles that they need as well. And every year you'll see that as they replace some of our vehicles that are over 20 years old, as they replace new vehicles. So that'll be an ongoing part, is making sure that we have the kind of vehicles that we need and replacing the ones that are outdated. And we generally will rotate from heavy stations to less use than out of the system. So we always try to put the best equipment in the heaviest used stations and then move down from there. Questions? I've already talked about
Okay.
that, how we would pay for the fire.
Now, on the fire, I hope that, we a big part of our discussion 3 years ago when Mr. Snodgrass and Mr. Connell brought this in as an idea long ago. We talked about getting to the insurance companies so property owners could realize the value in their reduction in insurance costs. And Lugol Fire Department has done that very well, and we need to make sure we do that too. It's not just saving lives, it's also saving insurance costs.
Sure, obviously, we can't predict what anyone would save. That's between them and their insurance company, but there's a lot of evidence to show that you can save as much or more as you're paying in fees.
Thank you.
The last line item, equipment capital, was 511,000.
Yes, so those are for the trucks, as we start getting new equipment brought in.
How many trucks?
About 2 a year we try to do.
Yeah, lease purchase, for sure. Well, give a detailed answer to all of us, and Mr. Brazel in particular. If you got it, write it out, please. Thank you. Yeah, we done on fire? I'll just say that I think y'all reworked these numbers last night with Sandra, and that's the reason we didn't have these charts. And, we always want to try to have this in front of the body that's assembled here, but I also appreciate y'all are working very hard to make this budget balance, and I appreciate the hard work last night.
Well,
Okay,
we'll always
thank
try
you.
to give you the best numbers we can, even if
Yeah.
it means we're changing it right before a meeting to give you accurate numbers.
Yep,
All right,
okay.
then moving into EMS.
So, excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Now, the comment was made, this budget is balanced with no increases,
Well, the fire budget requires an increase. The general fund did not.
but that's part of the budget, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
So
The
then
overall budget.
there is not we don't have a balanced budget with no increases.
What I told council was it was a balanced budget. When I first presented, I said I'm presenting a balanced budget. I didn't say there were no increases.
Okay, oh, okay.
Right, I didn't say that at the beginning when I started this process, because I
Gotcha.
knew that there were increases recommended in fire.
Got you. Thank you.
Sure.
And EMS, trying to get back to normal after COVID. We already know that we need a new station too, possibly a hybrid station where we put 1 and 2 together. We know that we need 2 ambulances that need to be replaced. We can anticipate losing the FILO from the hospital system and reviewing staffing models as well. So those are the issues that we're looking at moving into this coming year. So, in their budget, as we go down and look at that, this shows the current budget, which is reflecting a fee in lieu from the hospital, which is just shy of $1 million. As I've already proposed, that the 4 mills that would be freed up from our debt restructuring would go to EMS. We have the capacity in EMS to add those 4 mills under Act 388, so we can do that, and that would replace almost exactly the 990 that we would lose. So,
Mr. Carpenter, is it a 2.5 or 3 year catch-up you can do, or how do we get
Yes,
to
sir.
4 mil?
Yes, sir. Well, yes, sir. That's using. We've got about a total capacity of in the general fund, of which the EMS millage was taken out of the general fund. So we can use that as the base. So yes, we're using our catch-up value for the last couple of years for that.
Okay.
While we're on that subject, now will this actually reflect on our tax statement as EMS 4 mills or?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes,
now
it was
we're actually separating it out.
Yes, well, it's
like-
currently separated out right now. EMS has already got 5.1 mils separated out, and then this would add 4 mils to that.
Okay,
EMS mill value is same as general?
Yes,
It's-
sir.
It's countywide?
It's 254,000. So the total revenue for the system, almost 4.6 million. Get into expenditures. Again, staff is obviously the most significant part of what we spend money on, but given the nature of what EMS is and what they do, our contracted services amount to quite a bit, as is our capital. So you'll see that we're spending contracted services. That would include, among other things, our medical oversight. We have to be overseen. Each EMS system has to have a doctor who is your responsible for approving your plans, things like that. They don't work for the county. They're contracted to do that. Also, other contracted services would be.
Sorry. I don't know where that came from.
I'm glad you're listening to us, Chairman.
Voice of wisdom, I heard.
Voice of wisdom.
Program supplies, pharmaceuticals, obviously, and then your capital equipment, which would be your ambulances, your ambulance remounts, equipment like that.
Mr.
Yes,
Carter. First page there, I think it says EMD, at this be EMS COVID-19. We're not budgeting for anything for this year?
Well, yes, sir, we are, but that's under the Arpa funds now.
Okay,
So rather than take it out of their budget, any money we spend on COVID, we're going to take out of Arpa funds.
okay. That makes sense. I just want to make sure, because I don't think we're done, even though
Yes, sir. No, we're
a lot of people like to think that right now.
not, but I didn't see that we would need to spend EMS funds when we have available federal funds. Use them as
Absolutely.
long as we can justifiably.
Yes, sir.
So that's why that's zeroed out.
Okay.
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes, sir.
I know we've talked about it in the past, but in the EMS budget, looking at staffing, our overtime is just about half of our full-time cost. Is there any net savings if we were to hire the 1 or 2 more people they talked about and avoid some overtime? Is there any net that you can gain there so that you're not paying as much per hour for the overtime rate?
Well, we have part-time that we use to offset overtime, first of all, so we
Or
have
hire more
part-time.
part-time people, whichever it is.
Well, and as Gerald was mentioning, it's sometimes the problem is finding the people to do the job. So currently, we have several vacancies now. He's lost 2 paramedics recently. So normally, when we do overtime, we have no choice. It's not that, because even our part-timers are either unavailable, and also, Joe, do we have any as part of our salary structure?
Could you come to the mic just so folks can hear you? Thank you, Gerald.
Thanks, Ben.
Based on a 24 or 48 schedule, which we're currently on, you work 2,920 hours as compared to a normal employee that works 2080. So those hours are built into that overtime amount given.
Okay. So beyond the regularly scheduled overtime that's built in, we're gap filling for current vacancies,
On top of
or
that,
we can't find the additional part-timers that could work at a lower rate.
Correct. That is correct. So you have built-in overtime, and you also have to account for the number of shifts that are going to be call-outs, where you still have to have persons in seats to be able to keep that station open. Yes, sir. I will also point out that the part-time, the amount of money that we've spent this year for part-timers has decreased based on COVID. Folks are not allowed to work for other services if they're employed full-time at Richland. They're working overtime there on mandatory overtime, so they're not available for us. So that's the reason why we haven't spent as much this year in our part-time category and had to go back to working overtime, full-time employees overtime, just to keep trucks on the road. That makes sense?
I understand. Thank you.
All right.
Hey, before you step down, what, your proposed new schedule, would it save any overtime money, or would it still guarantee the same salary, even though they're working less hours?
Same salary yearly, but you would see a decrease in overtime based on the additional hours of time off. So you're less fatigued mentally and physically, so you have fewer call-outs. One service that we used as an example for you guys was Florence County. The first year Florence County implemented the 2472, their director told me they saw a decrease in overtime of about, I want to say he said 21%, based on the fact that it's a more user-friendly schedule. So you have more time off, you're recovered, and less call-outs.
But it wouldn't put any net dollars back in the budget for you?
Repeat that for me, if you would.
It wouldn't put any net dollars back into the budget for you that you could utilize elsewhere?
No.
No, okay.
No, sir.
No, I was just curious. I know basically it puts them on a, like you said, less hours in the course of a year,
Right.
which is understandable.
Sure, yes, sir.
So essentially, they're getting a raise because they're working less hours and making the same money.
Making the same money hourly, more time off, yes, sir.
Right. But they're on salary or hourly?
They work 24 on, 24 off, 24 on, 24 off, 24 on, 4 days off. And what it does, it's the same number of staff hours, the same number of people as 2448. It's a great fire schedule. I worked it for many years myself. For EMS, it's just, when you work on 24, off 24, on 24, off 24, on 24, you are spent. Because EMS runs 3 times, 4 times the calls that fire does.
Right.
So, yeah, it's called a California schedule, Los Angeles schedule, excuse me. That's what they're doing.
And see, that's what I didn't know exactly. Remember, it was an EMS schedule, fire schedule, and exactly how it works. I appreciate the clarity. Thank you.
Okay. Vic?
The capital for EMS, again, as you see, we show the station, but we also show ambulances. We're receiving 1 ambulance in July from this year. Then we'll buy another new ambulance and remount. You recall the discussion on the remount, where the boxes generally can be remounted at one time. So you put a whole new chassis under it, and that generates another 4 to 5 years of life for you at half the cost of purchasing a new ambulance, as well as some new vehicles for their command staff. I don't know if you've noticed, but I've noticed they're still driving a Chevy Blazer from the 1990s, I believe, which they scraped off the hospital insignia on it. So they have been using their vehicles, a lot of use out of them. So this gives them the opportunity to get some new vehicles, as well as some extraction tools and some other miscellaneous items that they need. So,
Mr. Carpenter?
yes, sir.
A little bit confused here. We only got 800,000 up there for the new building. I thought we were doing that at 1.4.
We are well, what this was when we first put our budget together in January, that was 800.
Okay.
Now is, that's an old number there.
Okay,
That's why we're
all right.
paying, we're now proposing to pay for it out of the bond issue,
Yes, sir.
because their budget couldn't handle paying
Right.
what it would now cost. So that was the original figures we were looking at in that. But this is what they requested, so we just left it in to show you what they requested. How we're proposing is to build one through the bond instead, based on the current cost we've been told.
Right. Thank you for the clarity, because
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I
So,
have a quick question.
yes, sir. I'm sorry.
I had a question I was writing down. How much money is allocated, since we're talking about EMS, but I'm gonna combine a couple others in there. How much money is allocated in the budget for training for the fire and EMS and sheriff's department? Do you know just that figure totally?
I don't have that in front of me. I can get that for you.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
thank you.
Again, how we pay for EMS, EMS station, Mr. Tucker, through a bond issue, the ambulances through the capital budget, and then replacing the philo stream through the bond restructuring is how we'd propose doing it. There are no other changes to their budget. We would continue to work with the staff on their staffing issues, but we're not proposing at this point any significant changes to revenue for that.
Well, you know, I'm one of seven. I do want to just put some emphasis on, I'm real interested in Station 1 and 2 being a station where they can combine services and get the maximum out of service out of that, because I think it's worked well. So look at what you can do about building a place that can accommodate both with giving the best emphasis on service back to the Camden area and the outer area. That's me speaking.
And that's one of the areas that they're exploring, because as Station 1 is less than ideal anyway, and its location is dangerous in a lot of ways with those vehicles trying to pull out into DeKalb Street. Rather than renovating Station 1, merging it with Station 2 does have a lot of positives, so that's one of the angles they're looking at. One of the possible solutions is what would it cost to just build a combined Station 1 and 2?
Yes, sir. Because I don't know which is more dangerous, coming down Little Street or going down that little alley over there, trying to come out, yielding to the, well, old man too. Probably the old man more like an old lady.
Cleared that up, saved your neck.
So again?
You saved your neck, mentioning both sides, male and female.
That, you know, it's just, I've just see it quite often being out driving a lot. It is very dangerous and very concerning.
Neither one is ideal, and I think the staff would definitely concur with you that getting them out of that tightly packed downtown area into a place where they have a little more safety getting out, it would be safer for everybody, and it won't impact the response times if we can move it a little further out of downtown, but still be in Camden or close to Camden. Right. All right. Well, gentlemen, those are the budgets for you.
Well, we're 10 minutes over, but I think we've had real progress. Anybody want to make any final guidance or comments?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Carpenter, if you would, give me those three numbers on the training.
Okay.
Those three agencies.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think you can give them to everybody if you would, please.
Sure.
It might be useful also to tell us where those are covered by grants and state funding and so on and so forth.
Sure.
Yeah, Ben.
Mr. Carpenter,
Yes, sir.
was wondering just roughly, what do we have in savings, reserve generally, and emergency reserve?
We've got 2.5 million in the emergency reserves, and then we're going to have about 7.5 million in our restricted reserves. And then we have the 1.3 million that was unrestricted that we're proposing to use for capital. So that's the combined of our reserves. Roughly 10 million in restricted reserves, and then 1,300,000 in unrestricted.
Yeah.
What the restricted, what are those restrictions in the
The restrictions are 1 month's operations for emergencies that council can choose.
There's
when
more than
to
1
spend
month,
it.
I thought. Yeah, okay.
1 month. Then 3 months of reserves for cash flow for operations that council can also spend. So council placed the restrictions on it, council can remove the restrictions on them.
Yeah, hurricanes and stuff.
We can change them.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
hurricanes and stuff like that. Just to remind, you have your goals and objectives. That's what we asked him to achieve. We also asked him to restructure our finances at least cost to our population, which we have done with an increase in fee for fire, drastically needed, but millage was not increases. There's no tax increase. That was really good. Tough budget. Sandra, the toughest you'll ever have to do. It was transformational. We completely restructured, but we provided value to our sheriff, to our fire, and our EMS. The three things that nobody else in this county can do for themselves, we have to do. Our next meeting is a ground meeting to breaking tomorrow, I think at 10 o'clock behind Roses, or is it 11? 10:30, okay, thank you. For the new Karish wing, a great step forward for our county. And then Carolina Cup on Saturday, y'all be safe out there. And on the 25th, work session here at 10, and county council at 17:30. Let's go home. Thank you.